What do you think the zeitgeist is here this year? I mean, it's a crazy time, politically, socially, economically. So what do you feel is in the air here? What are people buzzing about?
We're talking a lot about AI and a lot about skills and how do we get good at AI. And the point I was trying to make is I don't think we're ever going to be good at AI. It is more about being good in a world that's going to constantly change. Because whether it's AI or something else, that is the world we're living in. Particularly, I think, since coming out of COVID, that was this great period of change, but it hasn't stopped. And that means marketing's role is going to continue to accelerate and transform. And so we need lifelong learners. They have to be looking for how to take advantage of the next opportunity, and they have to be comfortable with change, and not just comfortable with it, but want to embrace it to get to how we create more value.
How do you do that yourself? Because obviously we have to role model that.
Part of it is coming to events like this. It's like, how do you continue to stay in touch with what's happening in the world around you?
Laura, welcome to the CMO podcast. You're our first guest at the ANA Masters of Marketing, first in-person guest. So thank you for joining us, getting us going. How's the meeting going so far for you?
So far, it's been great. I've joined the CMO Growth Council, and it's such a crossroads for marketing right now. That is such a good time to connect with the other CMOs and just talk about what's the roadmap moving forward and what do we need to be focused on as an industry. It's also fun just to see everybody and connect with peers and continue to hear stories and inspiration around what we can do better.
Well, I was in that meeting with you this morning. I saw you sitting at the front. I was at the back. I ran into two of your former colleagues at Georgia-Pacific. They're now at Piedmont. And I said, I'm having Laura on the show later. So I said, what should I ask her? What would be something that would be hit her unexpectedly in a nice way? And they said, they both looked at each other and they said, she is absolutely unflappable. So what's your reaction to that?
It is true. I'm kind of known as like the calm during the storm. And it's something that I've heard throughout my career of you could tell me anything and I'll take a pause and a moment and then we'll work through how to accomplish what comes next. And I do think it's been one of my leadership traits that has been very helpful. Sometimes it's important to show emotion and I almost have to make sure I don't let it seem like I don't care. But I do think it's something that's always allowed me just to stay focused on what's important.
So how do you remain unflappable? Do you have a thought process, or do you take a breath? Do you not make a decision on the spot? What?
I think it's all of those. I tend to be more of a quiet leader overall. And so I'm always wanting to listen first before I jump in. I'm not the person who's going to jump into a room and just start yelling my thoughts and opinions. And so I think taking that breath, again, thinking about the big picture. What are we really trying to accomplish? Why is this happening? Why is somebody saying this, or kind of throwing up a roadblock, and trying to think about it through their lens? And then I'm all about having a path forward. I'm a planner. So my next step is always then, all right, what do we go do versus let's dwell in what's happening right now.
So kind of listening, empathy, and then a plan. So have you ever been not unflappable? Has there been ever something that just like knocked you down?
Every time I get in an argument with my 10-year-old.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, right.
We'll stay out of that. It's hard to say that there's ever been something that's been truly unflappable where I haven't been, but there's certainly times where I've had to react, I think, in bigger ways where we've had business challenges. But I do think it's got to come down to what are we trying to accomplish and how do we get there?
Well, with a 10-year-old, I spent a week with 2 1-year-olds and a 3-year-old. I have 3 granddaughters. And, it's hard to be unflappable with a 3-year-old, but it's cute. It's all cute. So now let's talk about the ANA. Is this an annual trip for you?
It is. I try and come every year, both the CMO Growth Council and when I can stay for Masters of Marketing. I do find it to be just one of the industry's best collection of knowledge, resources, and honestly, inspirational stories. I always come away with some speakers who I want the rest of my team to hear at some point, or I want them to go watch the video because I just think they have vision and clarity of what they're doing that's really helpful for the rest of us to apply.
I know it's early in the week. You're the first guest. Has there been anything that's happened this week, a speaker or a conversation or a person or a topic that made you think,
I've spent some time yesterday with the talent and marketing organization group. And I think that's been something that's very much top of mind for me right now, is really thinking about what is the marketing organization of the future? How do we start preparing ourselves for that? And then how do we start preparing our teams to be successful in that future world and make sure we can continue to deliver best-in-class marketing, no matter what that looks like? And so I think that's been a lot still to be discussed and determined. And I think capabilities that ANA is going to try and provide. But that to me is a critical topic right now.
For our audience, the ANA is this large organization. They have a ANA CMO Growth Council, which is a lot of top CMOs. They have an agenda and priorities, and they work on those throughout the year. And this is sort of a summit to report on progress. And one of the initiatives is training and talent. I heard you make a comment in that session this morning about, obviously, everyone's talking about AI and the impact of that in an organization. We will talk about that in a few minutes. But you made the comment that it's about change management, and it's about doing that really well and realizing it's never over. So you raised your hand, you got the microphone, you made that comment with a large group this morning. Could you talk more about why that's important for you and why you raised that?
Absolutely. We're talking a lot about AI and a lot about skills and how do we get good at AI. And the point I was trying to make is I don't think we're ever going to be good at AI. It is more about being good in a world that's going to constantly change, because whether it's AI or something else, like that is the world we're living in. Particularly, I think since coming out of COVID, that was this great period of change, but it hasn't stopped. It is continuing to accelerate and transform. And that means marketing's role is going to continue to accelerate and transform. And so we need not just very smart and creative people on our team, but they have to be lifelong learners. They have to be looking for how to take advantage of the next opportunity, and they have to be comfortable with change, and not just comfortable with it, but want to embrace it to get to how we create more value.
How do you do that yourself? Because obviously we have to role model that, right?
Yes. Well, part of it is coming to events like this. It's like, how do you continue to stay in touch with what's happening in the world around you? So that's experts, that's peers, knowledge networks. Today, I think there's so many different resources, but it's finding a few and then making sure that you're continuing to look externally and not get so focused internally on your company.
Now you come to this, you try to go to this every year. Any other conference for you that's a must go to?
I would say usually myself or someone on the team is attending CES. Obviously we try and get to Cannes when possible. I would say those are the three that are most consistent as we think about getting that type of thought leadership and type of content.
By the way, I get that question a lot because I've been around a long time. People ask me, which meeting should I go to and which one should I say no to? It's a hard question to answer because it depends on what your goals are. So when you go back from a conference like this or Cannes or CES, what do you do with your team? I mean, are you intentional about debriefing and sharing?
Yes, we do. Anytime anybody goes to a conference, we ask them to come back and have kind of what are the key takeaways, and not just the key takeaways, but like what are the actual go-tos for the organization? Is this something you just want people to be aware of and to know, or is there actually something we need to do differently because of it? So, I was at Advertising Week 2 weeks ago. I had to send out my key takeaways from that, and I'll do the same thing after this week. And so I'll send them to my team, and then normally we get together and have some discussions around what that means.
What do you think you'll write down this year from this?
I'm definitely going to continue to talk about the organization. I'm going to talk about also some great discussions today with BCG, just on continuing to connect the value of brand and the value of marketing with your C-suite and your CFO. And I think that's important, not just at my level, but all the way down to the junior levels of my team. So as they're talking to anybody within the business in the category, they can talk in a language that's going to connect with them.
What do you think the zeitgeist is here this year? I mean, it's a crazy time, right? Politically, socially, economically. So what do you feel is in the air here? What are people talking about, buzzing about?
I think AI will continue to be it. And I know that's such a broad topic, and we've been saying that for a year or two now, but because it continues to change and evolve, and we're moving just from use cases that can be beneficial into just completely different ways that we are going to operate as marketers, I think that will continue to be a key conversation. I think there's a lot of conversation right now around authenticity and brand authenticity and how that's coming to life, whether it's through social or through creators or through other experiences. That seems to be another really popular area as we think about how do brands connect with consumers in a different way and connect through culture will continue to be really important. And then obviously, I think measurement of all of it is
I mean, I've been coming to these meetings for probably 25 years, and we've been talking about measurement for every one of those 25 years. So someday we'll get a breakthrough.
Yes.
But it's interesting. I like doing this early in the meeting. I walk down and walk through the exhibitors hall. So it's the companies that have paid to exhibit and to have a display here outside of the Great Hall. And I counted sort of how many were AI companies, which is crazy.
Yes.
That would not have been the case even a year ago.
And I think that the challenge for marketers today is how many of them are true AI transformation versus saying they have AI tools. And I think that's part of what we're having to navigate. Is it's such an evolving area, maybe like MarTech was just a few years ago, of there's so much out there. How do you even as a marketer identify what's going to create value for you?
Now, you and I have something in common. Do you know what that is?
We worked at P&G.
Yeah, there you go. And we both did it early in our careers. I stayed there a bit longer than you did. So take us back to when you joined P&G, which I think was about 2003.
It was 2003. Yes, I was an ABM during your tenure as CMO.
I know you were.
So you actually had a really big impact on me as an early young marketer. And I did. I joined out of business school from Duke, and I worked in personal healthcare on some really fun brands like NyQuil, DayQuil, Pepto-Bismol, Thermacare. So healthcare was an interesting place to be, just because it is a very heavily regulated category. But these were still brands that I felt like they weren't limited by regulation. They truly had great brand equity, brand tones, brand voice, and so they were a lot of fun to work on.
I mean, those brands don't get all the publicity that a lot of other P&G brands get, but they are great brands, and P&G's held on to them as they've divested a lot of other things. But great brand equities, great product, and great campaigns over time. They've stayed true to who they are. So why did you decide on P&G back in 2003?
I knew I wanted to go into brand marketing. I had done some marketing prior to going to business school, and I knew I really wanted to go more of a traditional brand management path. And I felt like there was no other place to do that than P&G. No place I was going to learn as much and get the framework and the foundation that I wanted. And so I joined, and that's exactly the experience I had. I learned so much while I was there.
How do you think you evolved as a person and a leader in those 5 years?
I built foundational, I'd say, marketing skills. But really, I think P&G also helps you learn your leadership style, how to work in an environment where you need to get a lot of, it's the cross-functional environment, the center of the wheel, getting a lot of people to do, to follow the path. And I think from a very early age, having to be that leader really helps set you up for success in the long run.
Was there a leader there that made an especially big impact on you? Someone you worked with, worked for?
I mean, I loved all of my managers. I mean, I think everyone, I learned so much. Yvonne Andrew, Tara Staley, Jose Luis Basura. I mean, so I had a lot of Mauricio Troncoso. I could talk about them all. Karen Schlossler. I mean, we had everyone. I think I learned something different, and that's what was so valuable. But they were all wonderful advocates for me as well.
So when you left in 2008, which I did as well, we left the same year. Was that hard? Was it a tough decision?
Yes and no. I knew it was a good time for me to make a move, both kind of personally and professionally. But it was hard because I'd put in, I could see what my future would be at P&G, and I knew that there was a career for me there. So it was hard to leave something that I was comfortable with and I was learning a lot. But I was excited for a new adventure.
Now, I've seen you quote on how much you enjoy working on everyday household brands, and this is your voice. It's fun to work on brands consumers need and appreciate. Each day is like a new day. Very positive, sunny, beautiful quote. So when did you sort of have that aha moment that this was the right kind of business and the right kind of categories for you?
When I joined Georgia-Pacific, I had the option to go into a different direction outside of consumer packaged goods.
They have a lot of different business units. People don't realize that. Yeah.
Yes. And so I wanted to stay within consumer packaged goods because I did, one, fundamentally believe in the brands that they had. And then two, the categories. I mean, while I know these are everyday essential categories, it's very easy to kind of laugh and say, oh, I work on toilet paper and I work on paper towels. But these are things that people use every day. They are in everybody's homes. And so you realize that these have much greater connection than I think we give them credit for. I get a lot of comments around, commodity categories or low interest categories, until you think about COVID and what happened. And the fact that all of a sudden toilet paper, it wasn't bread, it wasn't water, it was toilet paper, was what people could not live without. And it just speaks to the security and the comfort of these everyday items.
You've had quite a career ladder at Georgia-Pacific, 15 years. And as I count them, about 8 different roles before this one, which we'll talk about. So of that career journey you had at Georgia-Pacific over the last 15 years, which of those roles do you find was most defining for you, most stretching, most challenging?
Sure. So I will call out 2 roles. The first one was when I joined Georgia-Pacific, I joined as a brand manager on Brawny. I worked up to the brand director. So I would say a very traditional brand management track. At that point, I was asked to move into the marketing capability and take over shopper marketing. I had never done shopper marketing. I, at the time, was really worried that might take me off a career track that I thought I wanted to be on. But I was asked to do it because they felt like my leadership would be helpful in redefining the vision for that team and how to create value with that team internally. And so for me, it was a stretch. really walked in not knowing exactly what I was doing, but it grew me, I think, more than any other role had at that time. And it allowed me to demonstrate and stretch myself as both someone who could develop a vision, drive the organization's connection to that vision, but then also, lead the execution of that vision in a way that drove value for the organization. So that was a pretty big, a big one for me, just in really stretching out of my comfort zone.
Before you move to the second one, what did you do to get started on that? Because shopper marketing, it's P&G's good at it, right? It's understanding marketing at the point of purchase, at the point of decision. So did you go out and benchmark? Did you talk to colleagues? Did you talk to the person who was in the role before? How'd you get your feet on the ground?
All of it. I started to partner at the time with Path to Purchase Institute. So kind of, again, what are the industry resources? Partnered, found peer networks, really spoke to just also the stakeholders, like some of our sales partners, our retail partners, internally trying to understand kind of where there were disconnects. So I needed to do all of that. So very much the first couple months were a learning for me. And then, starting to put in path a crawl, walk, run. We weren't going to get there all in a day, but a crawl, walk, run that it felt like that we could move on to, build the internal capability, but also external credibility, particularly with retailers. The second one was I then had a really nice, successful career in my marketing capability, expanding responsibility, and a role opened up as a general manager on one of our categories on napkins, which was actually a smaller category. And I wanted to challenge
Vanity
myself.
Fair.
Vanity Fair, exactly.
Great product, by the way.
It is. And it's still, we make sure we use napkins at every meal. I think it's very important.
Yeah,
even though we also use a lot of paper towels. But for me, that was the chance to go back, move back into a business, show that I could run a business, and I and drive forward again. And what was actually a really challenging category, because as paper towel usage was increasing, napkin usage was decreasing. So it was not walking into an easy kind of category or brand situation. And that was also, again, I learned a lot. I grew as a leader. I then expanded my responsibilities to add on paper towels. And so just another way to challenge myself and kind of show kind of my versatility and what I can do as a business leader.
Did you enjoy general manager, the job?
I do enjoy it. Part of what I really enjoy is big picture thinking and identifying all the different pieces, POVs that are going on and developing those strategies. So I enjoy it, but I love marketing, which is why when the most recent role became an opportunity, I wanted to move back there.
So you're now the senior VP of CPG marketing for a little more than 2 years. And you have, marketing capability, overlooking the brands, et cetera, et cetera. But you're really looking, what I see you focusing on, maybe I'm wrong, is this transformation or modernization of your marketing organization. Now, we're here at the ANA, we're talking a lot about transformation. We'll have case studies of successful ones and not so successful. Yours seems to be working. It seems to be clicking. So I'd love you to sort of take us back to when you came into this role 2+ years ago. Why was this your choice to focus on? Why was this the company's choice to get behind you? And where did you start?
Yes, a lot of very good questions. So when I think about when I took on this role, and I started to move into this actually during COVID, and then kind of expanded as I got into the role. And that was such, again, a transformational time for everybody, companies, consumers, shopping. But again, I think it reset a little bit what the role of paper products could be. And I think internally, it also helped the business identify that this is our chance to really make sure our brands stand for something and are going to be here for the long run. I mean, we obviously have a lot of great competition in this category, so we have to be at the top of our game with what we're doing if we really, truly want these brands to be successful. What I first did was just kind of reimagine moving out of just the marketing capability into what we call consumer experience, which is the fact that consumers are now experiencing our brands in so many different ways. And so we really needed to think less about how do we tell our message to consumers, but more, how do we make sure every interaction a consumer has with the brand is building on that brand equity? And so that meant building a slightly different organization, in some ways a very different organization we'd had previously. We added in insights and analytics to my team. I built out a marketing technology team. We brought in social and consumer affairs into my team, all to really try and get more of that full kind of integrated look at consumers and that experience. But then there's probably two, I'd say, key initiatives that I advocated for that I think have been most important in changing how we've gone to market. The first is something I call living our brands, which honestly is the fundamentals of brand building. It is who are we? Who is our target? How do our brands uniquely deliver a benefit to that target? And then how do we make sure we're telling that benefit in a distinct and consistent way time and time again? But it wasn't just about that. It was about making sure everyone in the organization understood they had a role. Like everybody builds the brand. It's not marketing's job. It's not the category's job. It is every person in the organization has a role in building our brand, whether that's manufacturing or quality or sales or supply chain. And that, while I would say the brand building strategy piece of it wasn't new, I think that was the part that was really transformative for the organization, that everybody was getting behind that clear vision for each of our brands. It started with saying we knew we wanted to be better than we were. We knew we could be better, and we could set our brands up for more success in the future if we operated differently. So again, we started externally looking at who do we think really does this well, and how do we benchmark that, and what are some of those key principles of really successful brand building organizations. And then we brought that back in to the leadership team. It wasn't to marketing; it was to the business leadership team, and had some really tough conversations around, all right, is this something we're committed to? And do we want to move forward? And then once we had lined up on that vision, then it was about actually implementing it in a way that was sustainable. So training the organization. And again, not just marketing, not just the category. Sales is trained, R&D is trained, finance is trained, so that we're all speaking the same language. And then making sure we had kind of the processes along the way to continue to live it and to build the inspiration. And so once a year, we just finished it. We do a Living Our Brand Summit. We bring in great external thought leaders, but we also celebrate internally. And we celebrate, some of the great case studies we're seeing. Again, not just great marketing, but the story of, in our mill where someone on the AngelSoft line saw a quality issue and stopped the line, because they know for the AngelSoft consumer, they don't have a lot of money to spend. And if they get a bad quality product, that might be it for them for the month. And so that recognition is like just as exciting for me as like the great marketing that's happening right now as well, and really bringing it to life.
We talked this morning in the A&A about proving the value of marketing to your CEO, CFO, having those discussions with them. It's an age-old issue. We talked about it a lot this morning. It sounds like at Georgia-Pacific, you have conviction at the top of the company that brand building is important. It needs to be funded. It needs to be measured, of course. You need to be consistent year in and year out. If you agree with that, what do you think you have done at the company over time to instill that?
Yes. And that's probably the second key thing that we focused on. Because when we had to have that vision and we had to have the path of how we thought our brands could get there, but we are still, at the end of the day, we're looking for how we're not just driving value, we have to, not just for the consumer, but for the company. And what does that look like? And so we also build out basically a data engine internally. We brought in an in-house analytics group. We brought in an in-house media group who does digital, who does social, who does search. But particularly with the analytics, we started to do our own MMMs internally, which meant we could get alignment to what metrics we were measuring.
Market mix modeling for our audience.
Market mix modeling, measure more frequently, and measure it consistently. And so the organization can truly see over time how our performance is improving, whether it's contribution, effectiveness, or the efficiency of investment. And by having that data, then obviously it's the cycle. We're continuing to feed that into our choices, which is helping us make better choices. But we're also acting with credibility. We saw stuff that are, tactics that weren't working, and we stopped. And so it was truly living. We're going to lean in where it's working, but we're also going to help the organization make the tough choices. And that the vision of what the better state could be, plus the continuous metrics and measurement, helped continue to build that credibility and trust within the organization. So the conversation today is very different than it was 3 years ago.
Now, this organization sounds very different from what it was 3 years ago. And I heard you in the meeting this morning talk about the importance of change management. And we have to never take our eyes off that. And that's an art and a science. So take us through how you have led with your team this transformation of your marketing group, where you have new jobs, different capabilities, new departments. How did you lead that to bring people along to want to be part of this versus dragging their feet?
I'm lucky to have an amazing team. So I would say it starts with building a team around you that has that same belief, of course. And then with them, we work on our vision together. So this isn't a Lars vision and everyone else just needs to leave it. This is our leadership team has put together this vision. We try and look at it every year to make sure we think we're on the right path. This year, we really challenged ourselves to say, what's not what's the right vision for this year, but what's the right vision for 2028? And then are we thinking about the right capabilities to get us to 2028? And so each capability leader on my team then worked on their 3-year roadmap. What did they hope would happen in 2025, 26, and 27 to get us to where we think we need to be in 2028? So I think it's having that collaborative visioning process and getting that buy-in from the team, but having a team that's willing to lean in and drive that change with me. And so, I feel lucky to be enabled with such a team that's helping me drive that transformation.
That's a huge theme on the show, by the way. And we've done 7 years of shows. And if you do AI to analyze the themes, the successful CMOs build a great team and they never get complacent about that. Now, I run into the Adobe CMO at the meeting here, Laura, and we were both talking about what's on the minds of everyone. And we both agreed that we hear a lot of people asking about how do you build an organization today where AI is built into our capabilities. AI is redefining so much work. So could you speak a bit about, and this is very live, everyone's experimenting, trying it, so it's changing very, very quickly. But how have you thought about AI as you've done all the transformation work you've done at Georgia-Pacific?
Yes. Well, AI can be a little scary. I'm also so excited about the potential that it can bring. Again, not just from an efficiency, but from an effectiveness standpoint. I do think it will be a huge enabler for us. There's a lot to learn over the next couple of years, or maybe again, we'll never be done learning. But I'm excited about the opportunities it presents. And so we actually leaned in pretty early. Starting with use cases, very experimental, kind of what are some of the key use cases? A lot of them were within the creative team and our in-house agency, but really doing some just, fast experimentation and kind of seeing what was driving value and what wasn't. So I felt good that we were starting to drive some use cases early, but that's still not, I think, the level of change that we need. And so that's been more of the focus this year, which is similar to living our brands. AI is everybody's job. There's not one person on my team whose job it needs to be. Every person should be understanding how their role could change, but also trying to be the architect of that change. So it's not just happening to them. They're really embracing it. And so some of the things we've been doing is trying to give people a little bit more time just to play, because I think that's a huge enabler, is just getting out there and playing and understand, even myself, learning, I developed my first video last week and that was very exciting. So I think it's so important to actually get in and do it, and to encourage them to use it, for start with the productivity tools, before you even get into the marketing tools. Just transform how you're doing your day-to-day job and how you can save time during leveraging some of those tools. Getting in and playing, finding what personal use cases you're excited about. I love to travel. And so that's, I go home and play on it as I plan lots of trips that I want to take one day. And so just trying to, make it more of a part of everybody's everyday, I think has been a key piece of it. But also setting the expectations that everybody needs to be doing it. This isn't a nice to have anymore.
Where do you think you're seeing the most interesting early results with AI? Is it in the creative process?
I would say the creative process is where we're using it most regularly. It's still figuring out how to look across the entire process. I think we found use cases, but how really to maximize the entire process. The other place we've seen it is in media buying, where we've seen some pretty effective results leveraging AI. So, future use cases, certainly insights and analytics. We started to do some experiments with synthetic data, which is pretty exciting. And then on the measurement front, as well as we think about the in-house analytics.
Now, living our brands, when you think about, I know it's a company initiative, and you told the story about the AngelSoft engineer. Is there one team or brand that you feel like really has leaned into this? I know everyone is, but is there one that really stands out as really embracing it, being early adopters, kind of setting the tone for everyone else?
Now you're asking me to pick my children.
I am.
There's actually 2 brands, but I'll pick one. We'll start with AngelSoft, and I will start with AngelSoft just because I think they were the first one, not just to do the work, but to come to market with the work, both from a product positioning and packaging standpoint. And part of what they were trying to do is bring to life their very, very simple promise of balance. Again, in a toilet paper category, a lot of times you're choosing soft and strong, and the AngelSoft consumer can't afford to choose, and so they need it all at the right price. And AngelSoft is about that simple choice, that balance, and then bringing that to life, though, in a very, very engaging and distinctive campaign. Which is an animated campaign. It features a great new mascot called Angel. So engaging, fun. We then extended that to packaging. And then this year we made a pretty bold move for Georgia-Pacific, which we're excited about. We really wanted to take Angel to the next level. And so we launched an activation to address one of the biggest trade-offs, out in the world, which is the trade-off at the Super Bowl of not wanting to go to the bathroom when you want to watch the ads or the game or the halftime show. And so we launched our first Super Bowl ad for Angel Soft to provide the audience with a potty-tunity and I basically tell them not to watch the ad and to go to the bathroom.
And you won a Cannes Lion for that.
And
which
we won a Cannes Lion.
Yeah. Congratulations. The other team that you think is really leaning into it?
Brawny.
Brawny.
The Brawny brand. And the only reason I say that it's them second is because they've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes, but this year they launched in the paper towel category, a very big innovation, a 3-ply paper towel. But not just as an add-on, they relaunched the entire line and made a very bold move to truly make sure that they were living up to their equity around kind of strength and dependability. But with that, they also brought to life a new Brawny man, and I think have really been taking some risks with how they're connecting him and culture that are paying off in a big way.
I'm sure P&G's watching all this. No comment. Now, listen, I went through your LinkedIn post, and you're pretty active on it over the last several, and I kind of deduced what you value. And I just want to lay those out as a leader and get your reaction to that. Certainly creativity. We just talked about Angel Soft. Teamwork, seeing the enjoyment in work, external inspiration, mentorship, being a great mom. So is that a fair read of what you value?
Yes. The one I'm surprised didn't pop up, though, is data and analytics.
Okay. All right.
Because I think has been my unique value driver in this role, is not just bringing the strategy and creativity, but really trying to marry that with kind of the data and technology underneath it. That's I think is helping to power brands. Not just helping, but it's going to be required to power brands today.
So of all that, add data and analytics to it. Is there anything you would really underscore as something that you're really leaning into now, in terms of a value or a strength?
Well, hopefully I'm always leaning into being a good mom. But I do very much value the ability to be a strong leader and also to be, have a wonderful kind of family life and to be a mom and have both of those personalities. So, and I think that's important to be able to show kind of and demonstrate to the world today and future, moms out there. I would say the other thing that I'm really looking forward to this year, going back to creativity, is I think we're really starting to push on our creativity and to drive more breakthrough creativity and really starting to think more about how do we do that in culture. And again, when you think about people saying, do I really want to talk about a toilet paper brand? Do I really want to talk about a paper towel brand? Well, the answer is yes, if you find the right conversations to be part of. And that's exciting, is to suddenly be part of not just, telling people my message, but really having people want to be part of that conversation.
How did you start that?
Again, I would say some of it might have been as inspiration here. It's having the vision, seeing how other great brands are doing it, understanding your consumer and where they are and what they're passionate about. And then again, knowing your brand story. So I mentioned Brawny. We've done a lot this year and trying to connect the Brawny man in unique and kind of unexpected situations where his strength and dependability can come to life in a very fun way. And we know the Brawny target loves reality TV and it's the messy situations that occur in reality TV. And so we've had a lot of really fun collabs and partnerships where we're inserting the Brawny man and he's coming in to kind of clean up the mess. And so it's completely on the story, but it's unexpected and it's something the targets, our consumers passionate about. And I think when you bring those things together, that's when you find some of the magic that
beautiful.
Can happen.
Do you use external and internal resources to do that?
Yes, we do leverage kind of strategic, both PR and creative agencies, but we've got the in-house creative, we have in-house social, we have in-house media, which all allows us to act with agility. And once we have the good ideas, kind of take those and really run with them. Let's
come back to the A&A. There was an update on the SeeHer initiative this morning. I know you're committed to that. You're very passionate about it. Could you tell our audience a bit about what that is, that initiative, and why you are so passionate about it?
Yes, I would love to. SeeHer is kind of the A&A initiative around improving the accurate representation of women and girls in advertising and media, really behind the idea, which I love, of if you can see her, you can be her, and wanting to make sure that what girls, women, everybody is seeing is truly representative of who we are out there today. And so Georgia-Pacific was actually one of the founding partners in 2016. So it's hard to believe it's almost been a decade, because we understood our consumer expects more of the brands that she partners with. And I think those expectations have only gotten higher. And she was not seeing herself represented out there in the world today. And what I love about, again, our story is that even household products, like I would say some of our categories had some of hardest or worst stereotypes in our advertising in the past. And so we had an even bigger job to make sure we were bringing our brand stories to life in a way that our consumer was connecting with, and not just connecting with, but saw herself and felt aspirational when she saw it. And so that's something that we have made a priority in the organization. We have integrated it into our creative processes. We have integrated it into measurement. We've integrated it into media. And, I was actually just speaking at the SeeHer meeting last week, talking about the fact that we can now show year over year how our results have improved, because we are able to benchmark back to 2016. And it's important to me as a woman, it's important to me as a female leader, trying to make sure we're really helping the organization think about all of our consumers. It's important to me as a mom, that I'm trying to do the right thing for my daughter and her friends, as they're growing up.
What was the key to operationalize that? Because it's very impressive what you just rattled off. You really built it into how you work.
And that was it. It couldn't be an and. It had to be, one, I think there had to be leadership commitment, again, that this is important. This isn't just a nice to have. This is something we're saying is going to drive business. And so it's going to be important. So it had to be top down, and we had to have the right steps to be able to get there. And again, in partnering with the ANA and SeeHer, we were able to partner on a lot of their tools. And again, not make it you now have to go do this as well, but it is something that we've built into our creative brief. It's within our creative evaluation criteria. It's within our measurement. We're able to assess how we're doing along the way. And I think that's what's been critical, is it's just part of the process. And then we try and celebrate wins, whenever we can.
Well, I want to move to the creative brief. And the first question is, you won a Gold Lion. We talked about it with AngelSoft at Cannes this year for the Super Bowl work. Tell us the biggest lesson you had in that process. I mean, was that a goal of yours, or was it, because that's, not many brands like that win Gold Lions, and it's emblematic of the path you're on. But tell me the lesson you had in leading or watching or guiding that team toward that outcome.
It's certainly such an honor for the team. And I would say just as important whenever we talk about it is, but it also met its objective. So it wasn't just creative for creativity's sake. It was something we wanted to launch the AngelSoft mascot, Angel. We wanted to grow her awareness. We wanted to grow awareness of the brand. We wanted to, make sure we were improving relevance. And so what made it so important was that we met all those metrics, and then we won the Cannes Lion, which was a great representation of it. But because all of those came together, I think the business now sees this, they see it as a business success. It wasn't just a good creative campaign. It was truly a business success. But I think what was most important as we started it was we had a clear objective. It wasn't to go to the Super Bowl, and it wasn't to win a Cannes Lion. It was to make Angel iconic, and we all lined up against that. And then when the idea came, we bought the idea we thought would best do that. And then buying into that idea then led to, I think, just tremendous work that ended up winning an award. Now, I'm thrilled to win a Cannes Lion. I mean, that's absolutely, I think any marketer would be excited about that. But, at the end of the day, seeing what it did for the business and then winning the Cannes Lion is what truly makes it successful.
But it was a great brief.
Yeah.
Right? You started with, how do we make this iconic, right? And iconic brands typically are big brands and winning brands. Now, who or how did that idea emerge? I mean, you want to be an iconic brand, want to establish the Angel, and all of a sudden you're at the Super Bowl. How did it come from your agency, inside?
I would say it was a combination of a really strong brand building team on AngelSoft who developed this really clear brief and challenged our agency. We work with Gray for AngelSoft, and they came back with a tremendous idea. And then once we all bought into the idea, we really challenged, does it have to be done at the Super Bowl? And the thought was, if we are truly going to make Angel iconic, then yes, we want to do this at the Super Bowl. There's no better occasion for this. And then as an organization, everybody lined up against making this happen in the best way possible. It was a learning experience being the first Super Bowl ad. If I had any advice, it'd be to start earlier than we did. We could have used another 3 months, but we leaned into both our external and our internal partners to get it done. And we look back and just are really happy with the results.
Will you be at the Super Bowl this year?
We will not be at the Super Bowl this year, but I would continue to look out for Potty-tunities.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. You heard it here first. Now, what do you hope your legacy will be at Georgia-Pacific? You've already made quite a mark. Obviously, this interview has been, a statement of that.
Probably 2 things. When I think about living our brands, I truly believe, because that it's not just about developing a great campaign or having a year's success. It's about fundamentally building something into the organization that I think will transform how our brands can can operate in the future and can win, and we can continue to train new marketers as we're going on. So it can live far beyond when I'm there. So I'm very proud of that. I think the other one is my team. Again, I've got a great team. I'm supported by a lot of very smart and entrepreneurs who love what they're doing and are excited to come to work every day. And my other legacy is just how they continue to develop in their careers.
What do you consider your greatest leadership strength? I know you probably hate to answer a question like that, but we heard unflappable early in this, and we certainly heard empathy.
Yes. I certainly think the ability to, like this idea of big picture, to understand multiple points of view, it kind of takes in both of these of being able to understand all the points of view around you, thinking through with empathy, thinking through what your stakeholders need, but then driving a clear vision and driving a clear path to get there. And then as a leader, making sure you're knocking down the barriers for your team. And that you are enabling them every step of the way, not doing the work for them, empowering them and enabling them every step of the way.
What are you working on as a leader?
Well, right now, obviously technology, and continuing even for myself, like how do I transform? How do I leverage AI faster? How do I continue to demonstrate my leadership, of what I'm asking of my team?
You know this question is coming. What's the first brand you remember making an impact on you as a young girl?
Yes, I love it. I love this question. And I immediately went to Barbie. So I was definitely a Barbie fanatic. I mean, I had a room and it was filled with Barbies, and I'd close the door and I would just play for hours. And that's what I remember: the play, the imagination, you can be whatever you want to be. I was a hairdresser. I was a fashion designer. I was, a pilot, all of these things. I was the veterinarian. It made such an impact on me that I've loved so much watching kind of it continue to come to life for my daughter and for current generations, and how they're continuing to try and do it in a way that really, again, represents what girls need today.
How do you feel about how they've managed the brand the last couple of years?
When I go back to the movie, I thought they had such a great zeitgeist moment. I would love to see them continue to to bring it to the market at that level. I feel like it's gone a little bit quiet since then. But I think it does have this important role to play with women and with girls. And they started I think they opened up such a great dialogue and message with that. And I'd love to see them continue to use that and be even more vocal about the role that Barbie can play and the role of girls and women as they're developing.
You get a lot of external inspiration. You go to these meetings, you leverage your team. Are there any other hacks you have for keeping yourself creative and fresh and invigorated and energetic?
Well, I try and make sure I take some breaks. I mean, I'm an active, tennis player, Pilates, meditation. Like I'm trying to make sure you've got the time off to allow your brain to kind of rest and recharge. I love good creative. And even though I'm usually not in a lot of the creative meetings today at the beginning, I love to still sit in the creative meetings, and I promise not to talk too much at the beginning because I do really want to hear what the team has to say. But I still love to be part of those conversations and meeting with the agencies and just continuing to kind of see the creative develop. I love watching the Super Bowl and continuing to think through what impacted me, what was good advertising, what do I think is going to drive business. So I'm always playing the marketer.
Where did your love of tennis begin?
I started playing as a child with my parents and played my entire life. So it started with, it's a family sport, and then it was kind of my competitive sport in high school. And I enjoy it. It's such a great sport plus strategy. So
Is your daughter playing?
She is playing.
Super.
Yes.
Who's been the most inspiring person in your life?
So many people. When I think about my career today, I go to my dad. He was actually the CEO of a company, but at a very early age, was always very present for my sister and I, and was always, even we're talking in the 70s, 80s, very encouraging of us being whatever we could be. He actually also started out at P&G many, many, many years ago.
In marketing, sales.
He gave me, I think, the confidence as I went into the business world. There's never a doubt in my mind that I couldn't be what I wanted to be and that I couldn't be successful in what I was doing.
How did he integrate things in his life? What was his secret?
I think he had strong core values, and family was absolutely a core value. And so he was very successful at what he was doing. When he retired, going back to what I want to leave as a leader, so many people talked about the legacy he was leaving, again, not as even as a business person, but as a leader and as a person. And that's, I hope my legacy is more about that than just the kind of the business results I delivered. But I think it all came down to just really, really strong core values. I'm
going to end this with a question Bob Leodis, the CEO of the ANA, always asks after people go on stage here at the big meeting, his last question to them, because he gets on stage, asks a few questions. Last one's always, what are you going to do when you get back to the office after this meeting? So I want to twist that a little bit with you. What did this conversation make you think about that you may share with your team when you go back to the office?
It's a great question. And I want to make sure with my team, one, I continue to bring back the learning and knowledge and inspiration. It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day. These meetings are great because they allow you to take that step back and to see the bigger picture and to be inspired. And so I want to be able to bring back some inspiration for my team to take forward. But I also sit in these meetings and it does continue to make me feel like we are doing a good job. Like I feel really good about the progress we've made and some of the wins we've had. And so I also want to celebrate with the team to say we are really positioning these brands well for success. And we've had some really exciting content and campaigns and just, innovation happening in market. And we should celebrate that.
Laura, this was a great kickoff to the ANA for me. Thank you for joining us in the studio. Anything that we did not talk about that you'd like to talk about? Anything you want to ask me before we end it?
What are you taking away from this meeting?
It's early on, right? And I think the session I sat in on this morning, I've run into a lot of friends. That's always great. And it's one reason I love coming to these meetings. It's a real reconnection. The one I took away is how pressing and urgent the issue of proving marketing's importance is still something that we're talking about in the first 10 minutes of this meeting. And I think we've done so much work on that, but we have so much more to do. So it makes me think, where's the breakthrough on that? And why is that such a pressing issue? Your company has conviction in it. P&G has conviction, but it isn't how most companies, I think, are operating. If you're in a company in a job, but there's not conviction that your work matters, that it's making a difference for the company, that's a big deal. So it was once again present to me and thinking, well, how can I help this? What's our barrier? Why is it still up here 25 years later in terms of the agenda of the ANA? But early, I'll have a lot more to say, I think, by Thursday afternoon, and I'll do a few more interviews. But this has been very inspiring, and thank you for this.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor to be here.